Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Full Tank Motorcycle Podcast with me, Rob, from the YouTube channel Moto Bob. And as always, I'm joined by Tim. How are things, mate?
Not too bad, yeah. Quite a nice week, actually. Sun is finally here, so that's one thing that's always nice if you're on the bike.
My life just got a lot easier. Going out and filming motorcycles is 10 times more fun when it's sunny. Except there's more people around to interrupt you and stuff. And I've just been out on the Harley Road Glide. Just lots of old people coming and looking at it and trying to start a conversation about it. And I'm in business mode, so I don't get,
you have to switch
they don't get much out of me. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, as always, this week we're going to get stuck into some of the most interesting news stories in the motorcycle industry. We've got some good news about Cake. Some more news on the beautiful looking CFMOTO Voom. A bit of culture, courtesy of Tim. Thank you, mate, for bringing things up.
You're welcome.
And then also our regular slots of comments of the week and bike of the week. But we'll start with that story about Cake, which I don't know if you remember correctly, Tim, but a few episodes ago we talked about the fact that they actually ran out of money and sort of went out of business, and it looked like they were winding things up forever. Sad news, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember that one, and I'm glad you clarified that it is Cake, not the food, but Cake, the product. And that would be equally sad. If you said there was no more Cake, then that would also make me tear up. But yeah, I remember...
Would you prefer a free Cake motorcycle or a lifetime supply of Cake?
Oh... lifetime
That's
supply of Cake, actually. It's not even that hard for me, but just guilty because I would be fat as. Would probably need it as a mobility tool after eating that much cake.
Mobility bike for you. Well, good news, because that is now a possibility, because it looks like they're back in business according to Motorcycle News. I'll just give you the overview, but it's reported that they've been taken over by Norwegian car retailing business Bragas Holding AS, don't quite know. It looks a bit like Brages, but I think it might be Bragas or something in Norwegian. And they purchased them in March, along with all of Cake's intellectual property. So we've got a quote here, courtesy of MCM. We'll link to their story in the description of this video. It says, as a car retailer in Norway, we've witnessed how fast the electrification shift can go when people set their minds to it. Now we believe the transformation in the micro-mobility sector will accelerate as well, not only for motorbikes, but for scooters, mopeds, and electric bikes. So their headquarters in Stockholm is reopening. They've got a shop there as well. Still unclear, though, as for the UK and what their plans will be there. But it looks like we might be able to at least buy some of these bikes in the UK. And I think that's a good thing. Now, I thought we'd rattle through their lineup, Tim.
Yeah, go on.
And see which one you like the look of. I've included a few pictures for your perusal.
Thank you.
First up, the Maka, which looks a bit utilitarian. Is that yours? That does look like the mobility bike for your latter years, to be honest.
Yeah, so once I have, fed myself up on Cake, then, I'll need one of them. It's good. It looks handy. I think we agree, right, that in terms of investing in an electric bike company, the smaller ones make more sense, because if you're doing shorter trips, it doesn't make as much sense if you're trying to get a big tour or something, because the batteries are way too big and it just doesn't work with the practicalities. But yeah, something this small and nippy, we've both used a lot of these types of vehicles and they're actually really fun to use. So yeah, that, quite nice. Easy to swing a leg over as well, because it's got that big gap in the middle.
Like one of those old women's bicycles,
exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
The step through, that's what they call it.
Yeah.
It's 70 kilograms, this bike, which makes it sound quite appealing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think you could probably carry that up the stairs if you lived in a flat, just about. It'll do, there's two versions. It'll do 25 or 45 kilometers per hour. So I'd probably be going for the, more premium one, budget allowing. And it'll do 54 kilometers to 110 kilometers. So I believe that'll be the 2.8 kilowatt version, the more premium one that will go further, probably got a bigger battery. I think that sounds quite fun for city riding. They are apparently 3,440 British pounds, and you can do it monthly for 143. So if you do commute around and you fancy something like that, I think that'd be brilliant for slicing through traffic. Oh, Cake pun.
I love it when they happen accidentally. It found its own way into there. Yeah, no exactly that. Oh, you no, I like it because, you're right. If you're doing smaller trips, I don't know what my cutoff would be really. If you're sort of 5 miles to the office, or you're going to work that way, I think that's kind of a nice little stint. Definitely.
Next up is the Ossa. It costs nearly twice that, so $6,000 or $250 a month. But this is sort of built for if you want to go a bit quicker. It doesn't necessarily go further, it just goes faster. It's a similar-ish looking bike. Some of the chassis looks the same, but a much bigger battery, more powerful motor. It's got a kind of, I think the Maka is like a hub motor, whereas this is a proper one mounted on the frame. I think this looks all right, although aesthetically, they've included this sort of beam, which I think is meant to make it quite versatile because you can put racks and accessories and stuff and you just clamp them on. It does look a little bit prototypey though, doesn't it?
Yeah, unfinished, almost like you've stripped all the frame off, a sports bike or something. Yeah. Well, maybe not a sports bike, but you've stripped all the frame off, basically. Yeah, no, I can see a little hinge as well. I'm assuming either the centre kind of folds through or something in there sort of folds through.
That is the clamp for the saddle, so you could slide that back and forth. You could put another one on the back for a passenger, I guess, or you could put a rack on there or a big box to carry stuff.
Yeah.
You can also do that on the front. Can you see the headlights clamped on?
Yeah, I can see that, yeah. I think... a little bit discombobulated. In terms of visual appeal, definitely the first one's making its way in there, the Macca. But the Ossa is clearly the more functional one, practical, and if it can go higher speed as well, probably more usable.
I don't know if I'd fancy, though, hooning down the motorway on that.
No.
It just looks like a piece of metal with some wheels. Next up in the lineup is the Culk, which I think is their OG, original, probably best known bike, which is a bit of a dirt bike looking thing, but very sweet looking. I can't quite spot the price on this one. Just give me a sec.
I think I remember checking these out. I think it was around $7,000, but I could be making that up. I think it's steep in comparison to sort of, smaller petrol ones.
Got you, yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, they're probably made in lower batches. I think the reason I can't find a specific price is there's like 7 versions of it, all with varying levels of spec. So you can go from something relatively modest right up to like full Öhlins suspension. But generally, you got to say as well, the specs do look quite tasty on this one. Again, it's only around the 70 kilogram mark. Some of them, though, make 280 newton meters at the wheel, which is pretty nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, that's quite impressive, actually.
More than a Rocket 3. That's 223, is it now? Newton meters of peak torque.
Really impressive, then. But then that is the power of electric motors. They just create it instantly. They just fire on and go.
Yes, pretty much. And I reckon it'll probably be dosed out gently. You probably won't feel...
You'd hope so.
They should just have an unleash mode where it does.
Literally does a backflip, yeah, and breaks the chain in the process. Yeah, if it's more than a rocket, then something that light, not so great.
Top of the range, though, actually putting that torque figure to shame. For $8,000, you can get a cake buck. I think this was their latest thing before they went out of business. I think I saw it at EICMA last year. It makes 456 newton meters of peak torque. Does 0 to 30 in 2.1 seconds, and yet it weighs 89 kilograms. And it says, on the specs here, license, and then it says non/A2. Hang on a minute. You can't ride it with no license, surely.
No, surely that...
Oh, if it's A2, A2, I think they limit the power a little bit or something like that.
Oh, good. Okay.
No, I'm not sure that's true, to be honest. I'm looking through the terms. Maybe you can ride it on an A2. But anyway, this thing looks pretty nuts, doesn't it?
Yeah, I seem to remember as well, speaking to the guys from English Electric Motorcycle Company, about the Zero FX. And actually, as far as A2 license and kind of like new riders go, it gives the most bang for your buck in terms of, torque or punch, in comparison to what you could get in the petrol equivalent, which was a kind of a selling point to getting electric over petrol. And that does make sense. And I think that still does stack up with this one as well, because it's so light, it's so torquey. Again, you would hope that it's limited or at least moderated to the rear wheel when you set off. But yeah, quite a nice look, actually, that one. I think of all of them, in case you were going to ask me this question, the Buck is the one I probably would go for myself.
Would you change your mind if I told you the seat height?
Ooh, yeah, go on then.
It's 965 millimeters. I mean, probably not that crazy for a dirt bike.
No, for dirt, actually, yeah, to be fair, I don't know what the standard going seat height is for a dirt bike, but I'd need platforms. I could live with that.
Very casual of you to say it in that manner, but I think you would probably be needing some big old shoes.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's good news they're back, and there are some brilliant bikes in that lineup. Are English Electric dealing them now?
They weren't when we were there last, then they weren't the last time I spoke to them, but maybe. Yeah, they do take on a lot of new ones.
We need to find somebody, basically, that stocks all these bikes so we can give them a go. But definitely good news to see a company like that makes interesting-looking bikes. And you got to say fairly innovative bikes as well, especially that beam bike with the modularity.
True.
You know, good to know that they're back in business. Next up, mate, I said we had a bit of news as well about the CFMOTO 500SR Voom. This is on Cycle World. Again, we'll link to it in the description. But basically, they were saying that while the first four-cylinder bike from CFMOTO has recently been unveiled in China, as is increasingly common, the reveal wasn't accompanied by any facts and figures relating to its performance and weight. However, now that the 500SR Voom has been type approved, so that's all the paperwork documents with government organisations, that sort of thing, the resulting paperwork fills in those blanks. Now, we were already quite interested in this bike, I think it's fair to say, no?
Yeah, I think we quite like, I mean, the retro aesthetic of this, like we said previously, right? To me, it calls out things like the old VFR 400s, or just the 400 sports bikes, actually, of their era, sort of 90s sort of time frame. So yeah, quite nice. And then a bit of a modern take on it, which I don't actually think I've seen any other brand bring back in quite the same way, as in quite as closely replicable as the previous.
Yeah, it's sort of a bit of a mix of that retro-ish idea with those air intakes / daytime running lights on the front, but the rest looks quite modern.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I was thinking about something like the XSR 900 GP from Yamaha, which I've just got done with in terms of reviewing. But even that, I think, leans more towards the retro side than it does this kind of mix of the two. But anyway, the specs are in, so I thought I'd give you a little bit of a run through and see what you think and see if it sounds like it'll ride as good as it looks. So I think we did know it was a 500cc inline four, which is going to give it an interesting engine character. It's nice that they haven't gone with the typical parallel twin, which you'll find everywhere basically in this sort of market. But the performance figures, which we didn't know, is that it's going to make 78 horsepower peak. And I think that's probably where you'd expect for a bike like this. It's sort of probably playing in that budget-friendly middleweight sports bike market. Things like the Daytona 660, the R7, and generally a lot of those bikes, the GSX 8R from Suzuki, make somewhere in the sort of 70 to 80 horsepower range. The most similar bike is probably Kawasaki's ZX4RR, because that's a 400 inline 4, and I think that makes about 74. So it's about 4 horsepower more, owing to the extra capacity. 78 sound tasty enough for your taste?
Yeah, it does. And I'm assuming, I don't know whether you can recall what sort of rev range we're figuring out for peak, but I'm assuming it revs pretty high, because if it's a smaller capacity engine, 4-cylinder, then they generally rev really high and impressive, and they sound great as well as a result. It
doesn't give a sort of a rev point for that peak power figure, so it's a bit of a shame. The Kawasaki, I think, is up at like 14,000 or something like that. It does feel super revvy. It is a little bit flat in the mid-range, so maybe with a bit more capacity, this one will have a tiny bit more guts, but ultimately it is going to be high revving.
But I mean, that amount of horsepower, I think, is a sweet spot, especially for, I'm assuming, quite a light bike. But 78 horsepower doesn't sound weedy to me, considering the size of it.
It's light, but it's not super light. It's 194 kilograms curb, fully fueled up. And so that puts it somewhere in between like Daytona, which is just over 200 kilograms, and the R7 is like 188. So it's kind of in that ballpark, which is acceptable if slightly lighter than some of the competition. And so 78 horsepower, I agree, sounds decent. They also give a wheelbase figure, which they say, Cycle World say, is similar to a 600 Supersport. So 1,394 millimeters, which is less than the ZX6R at 1,400. A little longer, though, than a CBR 600RR. That's 1,370. It's the exact same figure as an R7, and it is still a little shorter than a Daytona 660, which is 1,425. So, again, it's kind of somewhere in the middle of all that. It's not as short as something like a CBR 600, which is going to be more flickable and meant to be more twitchy because it's built for the track, really. But still maybe a bit shorter than a Daytona 660, which has been built to be a balanced all-rounder and predominantly a road bike. 130 mile per hour top speed, 120 by 70 front tire, 160 by 60 at the rear, which is a bit narrower maybe than some of the competition. So people who like a big fat tire at the rear aesthetically might be a little disappointed, but realistically it's probably the best thing for the bike. KYB upside down fork, KYB monoshock, and CFMOTO branded radial 4-pot brakes up front. When we last looked at it though, mate, I think we only had this one paint job, which was the black, bronze and cream with the bronze wheels or gold. Looks all right, I think. Yeah, no, I like that colourway a lot. I think for me, a little bit of Lotus vibes, actually. It's a colourway that I've been keen to kind of explore. If I was to make a custom bike, I always said I would go with like a dark navy
blue and a gold secondary colour. I think it looks really good, so I like that.
Are you thinking of that? Is it the John Player special? And we've seen custom bikes in the sort of John Player colour scheme, but it's also, I think it comes from car racing predominantly. Yeah. I know what you mean. I am getting a shade of that, actually. Good shout. But also, with this type of approval, there have also been some pics of a more typical CFMOTO paint job, which is that CFMOTO blue at the top, black in the middle, silver on the bottom, silver wheels. I think I actually prefer the original, the gold and black, although I understand why they'd have this option in their lineup. But I think I just prefer gold wheels to like silver. It's not my cup of tea for some reason. What about you?
Yeah, I can see the appeal in that one as well. It's a nice colour. It does match their colour scheme, and I think they will sell reasonably well. But I do think the more popular one will be the one that both of us prefer, which is the first colour, yeah.
I got to say, looking at these pictures now, mate, the headlight is actually the proper headlight, not the daytime running light, is a little bit underneath the twin running lights there. I hadn't really noticed it that much on the previous pics, but it does look a bit like a grimacing robot with the two eyes.
Oh, don't ruin it for me.
Sorry.
I can instantly... No, yeah, great. I can't unsee that now. Yeah, all right, fair enough. Maybe there's an aftermarket, just something you could put on there.
Also, just an idea I've had a lot of good ideas recently, actually. Like I was thinking the other day, why don't bikes have fuel control? You know, when you like running low on fuel, so you might put cruise control on to keep it steady at like 60, but then the road undulates and you're actually thinking, what I really want here, like I know I've got X amount left in the tank. I just need to hit like 50 miles per gallon or 60 miles per gallon to get home. I'd like that if you could just choose that rather than a speed. So like I say, lots of good ideas coming out of me at the moment. But here's another one. On this bike, they've put the little winglets on. They're not functional for a road bike that's doing these sorts of speeds. It's more of a styling thing. Then you've got those indicators sticking out below. Integrate them. Yeah. That would look sick, wouldn't it? The indicators in the winglets.
Yeah.
And they could be called winglicators.
Well, you were onto something until you've overstepped there. You've gone too far. Rein it back.
When we do these remote calls, there's a slight delay. And so when you do a slightly half-hearted laugh, the slight delay as well, really, it hits home that that's not a good idea. Okay, moving on swiftly. I think it does look quite good. One to keep an eye on. I think it's still slated purely for China, but hopefully it does make it over here. It's definitely been getting a bit of buzz online anyway, but also generating a lot of buzz on the internet is the announcement and first screenings of a new film that features heavily motorcycle culture, and it's called The Bikeriders. And Tim actually got to go to a screening preview before the film came out, so a massive thanks to the PR company who put us onto that. And you went on Tuesday night this week, didn't you, to see it before it comes out?
I did.
Very exciting. And you are a bit of a film buff, I would say.
Okay, yeah.
Would you consider...
I like films, so yeah, whether that qualifies...
Moderate film buff, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I like them...
Not in an irritating way.
Hopefully not, yeah. Sometimes it does stray a little bit that far if I go into the behind the scenes. Yeah. Oh, you'll never guess what happened in this scene. And did you know that scene was actually improvised? Etc., etc. Yeah.
Well, I won't watch it with you. That's why I didn't come as your plus one.
Good. Thank you for not coming.
I was wanting to know if you could...
I was Billy No Mates while I was out there, because there was two on as well. I didn't even realise, but there was two screenings, and I was speaking to some other biker friends, which we both know. And I was like, it'll be really fun. I'll get to catch up with you guys afterwards. And then found out literally on the day, I was checking times. And I was like, starts at 6, right? And they were like, no, 6:30. And we checked, and there were two different screenings. So I went to the one where I knew no one, and all of my bike friends went to the other one. So that was a bit of a shame, but there you go.
Tell you what though, mate, you were there on a purely business assignment to research and tell our good listeners about it. And so actually any sort of friendship activities probably would have just distracted you from the task at hand.
Exactly.
So at least you could really immerse yourself in the movie. Yeah. I was wondering if you could give us a bit of an overview of this film without spoiling it, if there are any twists and turns.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, basically it comes from a book, and you probably know that, and in fact they start off by saying that, and I think it's by the same name actually. It's the Bikeriders book, which actually follows the origins, the startup of the Outlaws bike group set in Chicago with film. Have you heard of the Outlaws yourself?
Yeah. I know what that is.
Okay.
It's like a biker gang.
Yeah, no, it's
Hells Angels,
exactly. It's that
kind of
that style of
competitors.
Exactly. I only know of it because it was actually, I believe there was actually a group in North Wales around me, and I remember hearing hushed tones about the Outlaws being around there. But can't say I actually ever met or rode with any. But yeah, so it spans quite far. If they landed across the pond as well, and they landed a group in Wales, and that's quite impressive. But this was the origins of that one. So it follows Johnny, and I don't know if he's a completely fictional character, but Benny as well is the other one that's in there. So that would be Tom Hardy and Austin Butler, who sadly were not at the screening.
Big names.
They are big names, yeah. And they both get to look real cool in the film. Austin Butler arguably gets the cooler character, but it's a really tricky part to pull that one off, as you well know. It's hard to be the handsome, brooding character in a duo.
Yeah, I've failed on all counts, so it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's difficult to say very little and still look cool, but I do feel like that's going to kind of spawn some people wanting to maybe imitate his style and his aura. His draw. But he has to be that character because it's a mix between a love story between him and his partner, who is Jodie Comer, I believe, who I've seen in quite a few things recently. She's in
Killing Eve.
Yes, yeah. She's in Free Guy as well. But yeah, she's his partner basically. So it's a question of whether or not she kind of has Austin Butler's heart, or whether Tom Hardy gets him as a bit of a father figure. And then it is just, as you'd expect from a biker gang, they do some illegal activities. They do some bad things. Yeah. And at one point, one of them runs out of fuel, Austin Butler, and I got flashbacks to me running out of fuel. It's nice and relatable as far as films go. So the two things I think they got
that's mainly what I was thinking. Is probably you're watching it and
I was like, oh, I know what that feels like.
You're like not impressed because it feels so much like your life. You just like, it's a documentary probably about me.
Yeah. Where did they get this from? Who was following me around? But yeah, no, I think actually genuinely, I think that probably gives you enough of a plot. If I went into any more detail, I genuinely would be worried or concerned about sort of giving plot away.
Well, I read that it's slow burner. It's not like necessarily like action packed. It's more about the characters, and so there's probably not any huge moments to call out, or are there a few kind of shockers?
Do you know what? No, yeah, it's a steady burn though. I mean, like there are some standout moments, but the film goes along at a very similar pace. I wouldn't say necessarily it sort of ramps up towards the middle or anything. It just sort of carries on the same pace, which is a good pace. I do think it serves the community, and I think if you are a biker, you're going to enjoy one thing in particular. What do you think in terms of films, whenever you're watching bikes in films, Rob, is the one thing they always get wrong?
The sound, surely.
Yeah, right? And this...
It's either like it doesn't match what's happening, as in it will just be constantly shifting gears, brr, brr, or it'll just be the wrong bike as well.
100%.
And all they need to do, mate, is stick a microphone in their pocket.
Yeah, we've got some good techniques for that. Yeah, they should just come to you and ask. Yeah, genuinely, I think I've heard like car sound effects even for bikes in the past in films, right? And it's probably not the highest on their list of important things, and if it doesn't match the story, and the only ones that are really going to get frustrated are movie nerds like me, who would be like, that's not the sound that bike would make. But this one got it absolutely on point, and I think Harley Davidson owe them a debt of gratitude, because I'm not even a Harley fan, but you come out of there being like, yeah, I'd quite like a Harley now. Not only is it the right sort of sound, in all circumstances, they're clearly using the right bike noise for the bike. So it's made by someone who wants to pay justice to the vehicles and actually does want to get it correct. But it's also so bassy. It hits you down low, so you could feel it through the floor. You know, when you've been at a bike meet or something and a load of Harleys have just ridden off, you can feel the floor vibrate, and it did that as well. So it wasn't even that it was too loud. And I suppose they're lucky because Harley Davidsons do sound so good that you can crank up the volume just a little bit and it's not too obnoxious. But you can just feel it coming. And I think that's part of the soundtrack, is just, it really is a huge feature in the soundtrack. This low rumble, which is kind of ominous as well in certain circumstances, that, you can imagine if you heard that coming along and you were on the wrong side of that group, that it would unsettle you. It's
a good job they weren't a gang of Ninja 650 riders, isn't it?
Yeah, they were going...
Wouldn't have the same effect.
Or like an R1 with a big aftermarket exhaust on it, yeah.
Look, what I wanted to ask you about it then, given that it does, you're saying, sort of represent motorcycle culture, does it make the list of essential motorcycle films for bikers.
I would say so. Yeah, genuinely. I actually genuinely can't think of another film that hits the mark quite the same. But then, as we're about to find out, I haven't seen that many iconic bike films.
Come on, Tim. I just described you as a film buff, and now you're sort of rowing back on that. But yeah, what I thought we'd do is rattle through IMDb's 10 top motorcycle movies and see if it would make the cut, but also see how many you've actually seen, Tim, and therefore as to whether you're qualified to comment on it. Mm-hmm. And of course, at home you can play along as well. So here we go, Tim. Number 1, The Motorcycle Diaries, which is based upon the book. It's Che Guevara's story as he does this journey up through South America. And the book is fantastic. I've read it. Haven't seen the film, so I'm on 0 points. You seen that one?
Nope.
Number 2, On Any Sunday. It's about bike racing, isn't it? It's a Steve McQueen movie as well, is it, this one? Anyway, I haven't seen it, mate. You?
Nope.
Oh, geez. 1 Week. Chronicles the motorcycle trip of Ben Tyler as he rides from Toronto to Tofino, British Columbia, stops at landmarks that are both iconic and idiosyncratic on his quest to find meaning in his life. Sounds like a lot of vlogs.
Yeah.
Seen that one?
No, I haven't.
Ah, geez, Tim, come on. Number 4, Easy Rider. 2 bikers head from LA to New Orleans through the open country and desert lands, and along the way they meet a man who bridges a counterculture gap of what they've been unaware. Any good?
Yeah, it's a good film.
Oh, you have seen it?
Yeah, a long while ago, but yes.
I think that's got one of the highest scores on their Metascore system, 85, which is pretty good, so that must be a must-see. Riding solo to the top of the world, never heard of that one.
No, can't say that one's ever featured on my radar either.
On Any Sunday, The Next Chapter. I guess that's the follow-up, which was 2014, so many years later, 50 years later. Have you seen that one?
No, haven't.
Wait, so you're on 1 for Easy Rider so far?
I'm on 1 for it. I'm the most obvious of films, yeah, exactly.
Long Way Round is number 7, which isn't actually a film, but on IMDb, I think TV and film get mixed in together. You must have seen Long Way Round.
I've seen all 3 of those, yeah, but then that's like a half point because that's TV.
1.5 then. TT3D, Closer to the Edge. Motorcycle racers reveal their motivation to participate each year in the Isle of Man Tourist Trophy, the most dangerous and deadliest event in the sport.
I have seen that one multiple times because it features 2 of my favourite things, the Isle of Man and Guy Martin.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen that one as well. But I am on 1.5, you're on 2.5 now. Number 9, 12 O'Clock Boys. Pug, a young boy growing up in a combative West Baltimore block, finds solace in a group of illegal dirt bike riders known as the 12 O'Clock Boys.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that one.
I think we joked about this one before because 12 O'Clock Boys is because if you get the bike vertical, you're at 12 o'clock. And we said that you and I, this is ages ago, were probably like the 3 O'Clock Boys, or maybe, if we're lucky, 2:45.
Yeah.
And then number 10, The World's Fastest Indian, which I have seen. Have you seen that one?
I haven't, but that has been on my radar a while. Is it a good film?
It's fantastic. That's a really good one. Definitely recommend. So that means we're on 2.5 points each, which quite frankly is pretty terrible and removes some of your expert status for judging the bike riders.
Yeah.
Love to know from everybody down in the comments below how you scored on the top 10 motorcycle movies ever, / Long Way Round. And also recommendations for better motorcycle movies if they exist. I think there are some that we've missed there. You could probably throw in things like The Wild One with Marlon Brando. And even on their list, if you go down into the lower numbers, Every Which Way But Loose is in there. I can't remember the motorbike bit. I only remember the monkey. But yeah, I don't know what would be my recommendation. I do like Quadrophenia. That's good in terms of bike and mods and rockers culture. And then, I don't know if you could count it as a motorcycle movie, but Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, no, I'd class that as a,
I'd say,
sure.
I'd say that's the definitive motorcycle culture cross-section and definitely one to check out. Any of yours that have missed off there, mate?
The only one I can remember from sort of my teenage years when I was obviously watching the most films was a film called Torque, which I remember being absolutely slated. It's got Ice Cube in it as well. It's like a Fast and Furious film, but with bikes. But yeah, that absolutely wouldn't feature in the top 10. The only one that I knew of going into that list was Easy Rider, because it's the one that I think everyone, if you were to quiz them, would probably call out. But I actually think bikes they haven't featured that much in films. They usually get a bit of a bit part.
Terminator, does that count?
Yeah, do you know what? There's a lot of bikes in that one, but like I say, they're kind of it's a secondary feature to the film. It's not the main focus, clearly.
It's also a guilty offender for the sounds, I think, when he's riding the dirt bike down that dried out river basin. And it's constantly shifting gears, I think, when he's just not really changing speed.
There was another one as well which sort of confused me, was Venom 1 and Venom 2, actually, because Tom Hardy is big into his bikes, clearly, because he wanted to get this film going for a while. But he is a big fan. He bike shed quite often as well. But even that one, despite the fact that he was involved in it, they got the sounds wrong, completely wrong on that one for the bikes.
Well, thank you very much for that overview, mate, of the movie. I'm sure a lot of people will be keen to go and check it out. So hope it was a fun assignment as well, despite not having anyone to go with. But we appreciate your hard work in the name of bringing us some insight into that movie. It does sound rather good. Moving on to comment of the week. You know what got people talking in the last episode was the Ducati, which was a collaboration with Supreme, and it was like a special edition. I don't know, I thought people would be maybe not interested in it, but we got a lot of comments about that bike. So I thought I'd give you a bit of a temperature check, because there's quite a range of opinions on it, as you'd probably expect with something that is fairly out there. Don Diago says, this has to be a joke, Ducati Supreme. The only Supreme I like is a Supreme pizza. Are you a Supreme pizza fan?
I can't quite picture a Supreme pizza. Explain it to me. Sweet corn?
I think it's like chicken Supreme.
Yeah, if it's got
like
sweet corn on it, then I'm in for that.
Good to know, just in case I ever need to get you a pizza. Not a fan though, Don Diago. Urban Strenken says, Ducati and Supreme, wrong decision from Ducati to make a special edition like this. Triumph took much better path with working with Watch Company. Yeah. That was the Breitling one. I guess maybe that luxury brand and the British brand probably goes better than maybe Ducati and Supreme seem a little bit too different. Jeff May 4988 says that Supreme bike, on the other hand, is super nice and I absolutely would buy it. So there are some fans, in fact there are quite a few. S.B__ says Supreme is actually huge globally these days, mostly for the hype beasts in the world, but it's not something shitty. 100% will go up in value. Business-minded, Tim, and I like that. And also, Aidan Scott 71 says, the Ducati looks brilliant in that red and white colour scheme. Not so sure about the Supreme collaboration, though. Be interesting to see how it goes. And if it does, appreciate/depreciate. And so I thought I'd do a little bit of looking into that, mate. You see, do these specials from Ducati hold their value? I've been told they do, so I thought I'd have a little click around. And with less than 5,000 miles on the clock, that was kind of my criteria. I thought I'd look into some of the Ducatis. Do you remember the Lamborghini edition of the Diavol 1260 that was out a couple of years back? Yeah. Very nice looking bike. Yeah. Fancy wheels, cool paint job. That one, I think, retailed at a fairly reasonable for Ducati, £27,795. Which is a lot less than what they're selling a lot of their specials for nowadays. But it was still a good 6-7 grand more than a standard Diavol 1260. Anyway, has it gone up or down in value, Tim? Take a stab at what a used Diavol 1260 Lamborghini edition will go for now, assuming it's got less than 5,000 miles.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's gone up 34,000.
So I saw, for this one, between 42 and 62,000 for the handful of used ones I found with about 2,000 or 3,000 miles on them. And I saw one with barely any miles on it, like 8 miles, has, brand new effectively, 64,980. So that's over doubled in price. Wow. I also looked into the Street Fighter V4 Lamborghini. That last year sold for £59,995. So I don't know how they can justify doubling the price of that bike, more than doubling it, versus the Diavol, because they're very similar in many ways. Want to take a stab at that one?
I'm going to say it's gone up, but it can't be doubled in price. I'm going to say 70,000.
I found those between 50 and 75, so you get a point for that, mate.
Thank you.
Well done. Add it to your 2.5 from the film thing earlier. That's potentially down a bit. So it was 60. It's gone down to about 50 in some cases. But maybe if it's in good condition, or if it's brand new, or if it's they number them as well. If it's a particularly appealing number or something, then yeah, some are going for like 75. Maybe that's more recent though. So maybe the longer they're on the market, the more they'll appreciate perhaps. And then I also thought about, what about other manufacturers? So I was clicking around. and my mind went to the TFC models from Triumph. You know, the Triumph Factory Customs.
Yeah.
They're a limited runner, some of the Bonnevilles. Couldn't really find any of the Thruxtons, which were the first ones to come out. But a Bobber TFC originally went for 15,500. Quite a cool looking bike as well, and it gets really good suspension and brakes and interesting paint job, a bit of carbon, stuff like that. Nice saddle on it. So yeah, 15.5 grand relative to your 60 grand Street Fighter V4 seems pretty reasonable. A stab at the price on that one nowadays?
15,000 up to, I'm going to say it's not going to be a huge amount of Carterdon, maybe 18,000 max.
Not even that. They've held their value. I saw one for 15.5 and one for 16.5. Again, less than 5,000 miles, so relatively new. So I think it kind of varies, but the 1260 Lamborghini Diavel seems like a bargain. I think this Supreme Street Fighter was closer to that sort of Lamborghini figure. I think it was like 40 or 50 or something like that. So maybe not as much potential to appreciate. But then who knows, you know, the cachet of the Supreme brand and maybe the scarcity of them might actually push it up quite nicely. Anyway, mate, on to Bike of the Week. And we did also look at the Supreme edition of the Coleman mini bike, which did give some indication that, you know, the Supreme brand can boost the price of them quite significantly. I think it originally sold for like about $1,000, did it? And yet they were selling for 10 or something after the fact. But Bike of the Week this week, just because it's on topic, is an absolutely ridiculous version of the Coleman mini bike, which I'd far rather take personally than the Supreme edition. This one, I think, is done by a YouTube channel. It's called BUM, B-U-M. I don't know what it stands for. They got 6,000 subscribers, so this is quite an effort. It says, "This is BUM. We are dedicated to making the most insufferable machines on the internet." So I guess that's their reason for existence. They've only got this one video, and basically they put a Fireblade engine, 1000cc, into a Coleman mini bike. You've got to admire it, mate. I think Bike of the Week, we've said, can occasionally be about the more ambitious projects and the sort of silliness of mechanically minded bikers and the fact they'll do almost anything. Thing is, mate, would you even dare to ride a bike like this with a rigid frame, no suspension, balloon tyres? It's basically the size of a kid's bike with a 200 horsepower inline 4 in it.
I mean, as long as I had full armour, and very, very smooth road.
Do you mean leathers or do you mean actual, like, medieval armour?
Well, maybe leathers, well, I think there's a decent chance that even at low speed, you might well be coming off that thing. They're actually testing it in the wet as well, which probably isn't a great idea. The bravery of the person. I've just seen someone bin it, actually. But it's at least got little pegs on the side of it, not stabilizers, but you can't go too far. But yeah, I think it looks like fun. You can't tell me that if you were handed the keys, you wouldn't at least sit on it and go around the car park.
Well, I think it would be one of those very timid, especially at the start, sort of timid attempts at riding the bike. I get that with, you know, having so many bikes coming through, like the Harley I was just talking about, the Road Glide. Just anything that's out of the usual, like anything like that where it's really heavy, I just go very cautious right at the beginning because I know if you just start to try and ride it without applying your full care and attention, that's when things go wrong if you're just not concentrating. And so, yeah, for the first hour or so, allow a little bit more time to pull out, allow a bit more time and space to do maneuvers. And I think it'd be one of those situations, mate, where this probably lies out of my experience of riding motorcycles. And I'd probably take it for a nice, gentle spin and respect the beast.
But, I mean, maybe we could get up to like a 6 o'clock boys on this one. I feel like you could get a little, pop a little wheelie out of that one. Just a tiny one.
Mate, the 6 o'clock... Just have a think about that.
Yeah, it's... Wait, hold on.
You said up to 6 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
6 o'clock would be a vertical stoppie.
It's a good point.
Just refamiliarise yourself with
the time, with the clock,
the fundamental
with an actual
timing system that the whole world...
No, I'm going to stand by
Do you
it.
mean maybe 1:30? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, probably like a 1 o'clock. No, and then maybe a 6 o'clock at the end of it. Hence why I said I need armour. I need armour on this thing because I can't be trusted with that sort of thing. I don't actually think it's got very good brakes on it, so I think you'd be hard pressed to get that thing to stop you, especially.
It doesn't have a front brake.
Not at all.
No, I don't think so. Those bikes as standard don't come with a front brake.
Yeah, okay.
So if you've done a 6 o'clock on it, then you've crashed. And that in itself is reason not to let you have a go if that ever came up.
Good.
Really impressive, though. I think they had to fabricate a lot of it to get that engine in. Normally, it's a 200cc little single. So very impressive stuff. And we'll link to that video down in the description so you can give it a full watch. I think that just about wraps things up for today, Tim. Unless you've got anything else to add.
No, not at all.
Any nuggets?
But I'd just say thank you again for the film. And the one thing I did want to point out is that they were doing little airbrush tattoos in the bike shed. And they were like, oh, do you want one? And I was like, no. And they were like, do you want to sit on this Harley?
The after party.
Yeah, in the after party. And they were like, do you want to sit on this Harley? And I was like, no, because if I'm sitting on it, then I'm riding it. Like, if you want to give me the keys, you go for it. But yeah, it was funny seeing sort of people play biker in the bike shed, where just next door there were people on bikes with real tattoos. And I was like, oh, this is fun. This is a nice
and real
one.
bikes.
Yeah.
Well, you sound like a laugh at the party.
Yeah, it's good. Good on you. Oh, you're all nerds. Look at you. I'm saying nerds, this guy over here. But yeah, no, walking around being like, you don't know bikes.
And not getting a tattoo or sitting on the bike.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe the next one will be more fun. I'll try and come with you this time. Anyway, thank you so much to everybody for listening. Do let us know what you think of some of the stories today. Leave us a comment and we'll pull them out for future comments of the week. A massive thanks again, and we'll see you next time.